Welcome back to Simply Scratch Kitchen. Today I am with my brother and sister-in-law who just had their first baby, and I'm staying here for a few days, so I wanted to put together some really nutritious meals for them to have in their freezer once I go home. So I'm starting with the most important thing that you can have postpartum, which is fresh bone broth. So I've just got the chicken bones in here. I'm adding some old carrots and onions that they had, and I'm going to fill this all the way up with filtered water. I'm going to go ahead and do this broth in the Instant Pot since I was a little short on time, and I ran this for about 15 hours. When it was done, I had this amazing thick broth ready to use for the rest of my recipes. The next thing I'm going to get started on are these oat muffins, which are a great postpartum snack and really good for your milk supply. So the first thing you're going to do is add a cup of oats to your mixing bowl, and then I'm adding 1 scoop of whey protein powder to 1 cup of milk and combining that until it's dissolved. This is just going to add a little more protein to these muffins, and then you're going to add it to your oats and let those sit and soak while you get the rest of your ingredients ready. Next, we just need 2 cups of flour added to that mixture. The recipe calls for a half a teaspoon of baking soda, we're also adding 1 teaspoon of baking powder, and then you're going to do a half teaspoon of cinnamon as well, and a half teaspoon of salt. Combine all those ingredients together, and then you're going to melt 1 stick of butter and add that to your mixture as well. Do not be afraid of using butter, and do not be afraid of those extra calories when you are making postpartum meals, because those mamas need it. Next, I'm adding half a cup of coconut sugar because that is what they like to use. I will note that my protein powder was sweetened with some stevia as well. So if your protein powder is not sweet, you may want to add a little bit more sugar. Next, you're going to just combine 1 egg into this mixture as well. The next thing you'll do is add your berries of choice, and then these are ready to go into the pan. I ended up using mixed berries because that's what I had on hand. The strawberry, blueberry, blackberry combination was really good in these muffins, but you can obviously just use blueberries, blackberries, whatever you like. I added about 1.5 cups of berries. This made 12 really good sized muffins, and they were very filling and satisfying. I would definitely recommend incorporating some kind of oat recipe like this into a postpartum meal plan, because that protein and the oats really can help with milk supply. And I always found that there was just nothing more satisfying than a muffin after you have just been up all night. So I really liked making these. They can be moved to the refrigerator and thawed and then warmed up, or you can take them straight from the freezer and warm them up for like a minute in the microwave. These cooked at 425 for 5 minutes, and then you turn it down to 350 and cook for 17. I'm moving on to some vegetable prep for my soups now. I love making soups for postpartum moms because we're able to get that really nutritious bone broth in, and warm soups are actually great for healing. So I'm just starting by chopping up some carrots. I'm using a lot of food that they already have in their fridge that needed to be used up after being in the hospital for a few days. So I'm just chopping these into small chunks and getting those in the pan. And then I am also going to chop an onion really fine as well. One of my great loves is cooking, but one of my other loves is postpartum and birth. And so this was really a treat to be able to make this for her, and also to be able to share these recipes with you for you to utilize in your own postpartum season. If this is the kind of video that you like, be sure to leave me a comment down below so I make sure to get you content that you can really use and find helpful. I went ahead and actually moved these carrots out of my pan because I want to cook my meat up in there first. And so I'm going to move on to chopping 2 potatoes. I'm going to do these pretty small as well, about the size of the carrots that we just cut, so that they can cook at basically the same rate. It's really important to not only get protein in your diet postpartum, but also some good carbohydrates, as those will really help with healing and with milk supply as well. So you'll see all of these recipes have some form of a carb in there. So I've got some really good grass-fed stew meat here that I have chopped into chunks. So I got about 4 chunks out of each piece. I've seasoned it with garlic and onion powder. And then I'm going to add a can of crushed tomatoes. And when you saute those tomatoes together with the beef, it gets a really beautiful caramelized flavor from those tomatoes. And I think it makes the soup so much more delicious. So I'm going to go ahead and stir in those potatoes and carrots now. I'm just adding 3 cups of our homemade bone broth to this soup. And then you'll want to start with about a teaspoon of salt and keep adding as you need it, because remember, this broth is not salty yet. I'm going to move on to a chicken vegetable soup, and I've just chopped the chicken from my chicken bones. And this is a recipe my brother requested I make for him to just have in the freezer. And it's nothing very elaborate, but the way I mixed it up was kind of fun. I added about a pound of mixed vegetables and mixed that with the chicken. As you can see, nothing is being cooked right now because this is going to be popped just straight in the freezer. I opened a can of my home canned potatoes, which is one of my favorite things. Be sure to follow along because I'm going to be showing you how I do those soon. And then I am adding more of that chicken broth until everything is covered. Remember, if these foods are going straight in the freezer to be cooked another time, you don't always have to cook the entire soup together, especially in this case where he has just a lot of simple flavors he wants in this soup. I didn't think it needed to be cooked on the stove. So I am mixing all of this in a mixing bowl. Again, we're going to add a good amount of salt, at least a teaspoon, pepper, and then I did onion powder as well because that's really the only seasoning he wanted in here. I combined this and then very easily just transferred these into some freezer containers. My brother is a pilot, and so he asked me to make him a couple meals as well that he can take on the road with him while his wife is recovering. So it was really fun to be able to make meals for both of them during this time. After I'd done a couple bowls, I felt like I needed just a little bit more broth in my mixture, so I added that right in, and I loved making the soup with this method, so I definitely am going to try this with a couple other recipes for freezer meals because I just had to get way less dishes dirty and spend less time cooking. So I think this is a really interesting idea. I got 3 really good sized servings out of this. It might even be more than 3 servings. So I'm going to come back and check on my beef stew that we're working on. And once those potatoes and carrots are cooked through, I'm going to start adding some corn. Again, just more leftovers they had in the freezer. And I'm going to do some green beans as well. As I was finishing these soups, I started thinking that we needed some bread we could put in the freezer. So I made my biscuit recipe. I'll link that down below for you. And before you bake them, just put them in a freezer bag and then they can be cooked straight from frozen. We ended up getting 3 big containers of the beef stew. There's at least 2 servings in each of these. And then I got 3 smaller containers of bone broth as well. Thanks so much for joining me for this meal prep, and I will see you next time.